Nachi Weinstein of the Seforim Chatter podcast. Interesting is that I think we live a couple of miles apart from each other. We've never met face to face. So it's nice to see you on Zoom. This will also be audio on the Seforim Chatter podcast, video on all DAF. And we are here to share what Seforim are out there and are available as we proceed to learn Masechtas Yoma. Nachi, how are you?
Good, Baruch Hashem. Thank you, Ramesha, for I guess, allowing me to join you and for you to join me, depending on which platform this is going to be. People are hearing this on.
Exactly. So most people probably know who you are. If you want to give a 30-second intro, since we're keeping this brief and to the point of who you are and how you got into Seforim, and a little plug for the Seforim Chatter podcast.
Sure. So we'll try to do this as quick as possible. Listeners of the podcast, and if anyone would like to check it out, I actually just did. It was a 1-year anniversary. So on Seforim Chatter, which can be found on Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, wherever, it will say there. There's an episode where you can listen a little bit about myself. But just to give it quickly, I'm in law school, but I was starting to go work backwards. I was in Kollel, yeshivas, and I was always very into Seforim. And Seforim was also something that interests me. I was Gabbai Seforim when I was in yeshiva in Philadelphia yeshiva, and I was Gabbai Seforim. I'm in charge of a shul in Lakewood, actually in charge of Seforim, and gradually...
The famous Ukes landmark on 5th Street in Lakewood.
Hever Lamed Torah, my grandfather's shul, right? That's correct. And I'm in charge of that Eitzer, where we have a pretty good Eitzer, I think, if I'm allowed to say so, in the Gay B'Dover. And so it's always Seforim I've been interested in, especially Rishayim, Achrayim, older Seforim, interested in, learning Seforim, the critical editions, Kisviyadis, etc. So that kind of thing definitely interested me, and just a wide variety of Seforim. And I'll just recap for all people watching this that may not be familiar. I started a Twitter account where I posted all Seforim, and it gradually evolved, books, etc. And I started this podcast, interview program, mainly with various guests.
Across the spectrum, all types.
Yeah, from left to right. There's been a wide variety of guests. So anyone interested can check it out. Like I said, it's called Seforim Chatter.
Okay, so let's get straight to Yoma. We have Seforim ranging from the Rishonim, the Tosfos on the page. We'll get straight down to the Reit Seforim. So why don't you begin with the Balei Tosfos on the page?
Okay, sure. Now, this is not, just to be clear, this is not meant to be critical. I'm not one of my academic or historian guests. So this is just very quick, overview of the Seforim and the Masechta. I believe all DAF's going to be having Rabbi Dr. Eliezer Brat, a friend of mine, a friend of yours, and he will be talking about various different Rishonim and more in depth. And he knows these topics better than I do, I'm sure. So, I guess.
I think your main focus, which is your expertise, is what Seforim are there, which ones are used most, which ones are available, and more than, I think, most importantly, where do you access them? I think it's very important to point out also, especially for Daf Yomi learners, the conversation and the point of this isn't that we think that most Daf learners are going to be sitting down and using all these Seforim, but whether somebody has the time to go through some sugyas more be'in, but even if the person doesn't, when they're learning the Masechta, any Masechta they learn, when they have a connection and understand that they're just they're touching the tip of the iceberg, but there's so much more there, and who the Seforim are, the Mechaber Seforim are, it gives a person a broader expanse of what they're getting involved in and a greater appreciation for the actual limud.
Right, for sure. I did this on Pesachim, and we figured we'll go this way. So for listeners of my podcast here, I figured let's try something different. And absolutely, not everyone in Daf Yomi necessarily has the time or interest or whatever to pick up one of these Seforim, but I think it's important. Number one, we're going to see the Yisodistic Seforim and the Masechta that they should know. Their Maggid Shir speaks it out, or in the Art Scroll, or in Mesifta, or somewhere wherever. Who is that? Who's being quoted here? Just so you should know basically who it is. And if they're interested, if someone's interested in picking up a sefer, just to, can you get it? How much does it cost? Where is it available? Is there a new edition? Which edition is better? I see a bunch. What should I be on the lookout for? That kind of thing. So I think to start off, Yoma is interesting for an interesting reason. There actually aren't a lot of Rishonim, and as I said, I think Eliezer Brat's going to be talking about that. But there are a lot of Balei Tosfos. It seems like to me on the actual page. Anyone will open a Gemara Yoma. You have Tosfos, and then you have right away Tosfos Yeshanim. Actually, I'll try to pull up my Gemara. I'll see if it's come up on the video. So on any given page in Masechta Yoma, there's going to be, I don't know if it's coming up, there's Tosfos Yeshanim.
Yes.
In the corner, there's Tosfos. So what's going on between those two right off the bat. Why? And that's on the whole Masechta. Why do we have two Taisis on the page? So,
and it's an important Taisis. It's a Taisis Yeshanim which is quoted and used as part of a sugya. Very important.
Right, correct. This is not just some like, oh, it's on the side, whatever. No, it's a real thing. So, I got some information. This is, I'm going to give a credit where credit is due to Rabbi Dr. Ephraim Kannerfogel, who listeners of the Seforim Chatter podcast may be familiar. And if you're not, he's terrific. And we did a podcast on Rashi and Taisus, two different ones. So he told me like this, that the Taisus on the Masechta seem to be edited from the Merami Rothenberg. Merami Rothenberg obviously lived and he was nifter at the end of the 13th century, late 1200s. So it's from the later Bali Taisus. And he wrote a couple of rayas. I can just squeak them out quickly. Obviously, this is, like I said, people, I don't know if they know more than this or differently. It says, first of all, that there's a very long piece on Daf and Dalet and Aleph on having drawings of animal figures in Machzerim, which Bali Taisus didn't like. And that's pretty much word for word in a tshuva of the Merami Rothenberg. He said also that Grace Maimoni, who was a Talmud of the Merami Rothenberg, he cites a Peirush of him, which is we have on Daf Lamed Zayin. And he brings a couple of other rayas that he quotes as various teachers of his, Rebbeim, and so that's a couple of rayas. So that's number one. So basically, it's apparently a later Baal Taisus. Taiz Yeshanim, on the other hand, is actually Yeshanim. Sometimes you get Taiz Yeshanim. It's not. It is a little older. He quotes Mari Rabbi as, I believe, I'm trying to read. I think it'll be Yehuda Sir Leon. I think so. And he says there are Taiz Yeshanim quoted in his name by the Smag. So it seems to be, it was earlier. So it seems, again, we're not talking hundreds of a few hundred years difference, but it seems to be it is a little older. Now I will point. I'm just getting very quick sketch of them, of the two. Now another thing is, we will return to the Taisus Yeshanim and Mirz Hashem in our discussion of the classic Sefer on the Masechta, the Siach Yitzchak, because it's important. Now there are also two more Taisus. There's Taisus in. We're going to get to Rabbeinu Yakim, but there's also something called Taisus Ri Halavon, the white, and I think, and unless I'm mispronouncing that, and he was a Talmud of Rabbeinu Tam from Central Eastern Europe. So Rabbi Kannerfogel told me that his Taisus is a little different style because he wasn't French, like the other Bali Taisus were, and he doesn't mention names of his Rebbeim. So he said that his Taisus are based on his other Rebbe. He says the German Riva Mishapira, I guess, Inspire. And so it was different Bali Taisus. We're not going to go in depth. You want to hear more, listen to that podcast. There's French Bali Taisus, German Bali Taisus. But so this was a little different. Taisus Ri Halavon, we have a little bit. And then lastly, I would, if I can get one of my Seforim over here at my desk, there's Taisus Rush. Taisus Rush was first printed by Rabbi Zarkowski from New York, printed this.
Famous, the amount of Haskamas he has there.
Yes, I want to point that out. It may be interesting to people. So first he has Haskama for Lazy Finkel. Then he has Haskama from a Baron Cutler. Then he has Haskama for a Moshe, but not Stam. It's a Haskama. It's a number of pages from Moshe. And Moshe basically says, "Wow, it's a great thing," and it should help support it, Talmid Chacham and learning. And then he goes on, and I have a ha'ara on one thing that you wrote in one of your footnotes, and he goes on a whole long thing over here. He has Haskama from Banish and Steif, and also from Nachum Partzovitz. And he also has his own, footnotes and raid, etc. This was reprinted from Vagshal Moznaim. I think it's still around. And then Mosad Rav Kook also issued a Taisus Rush. And I don't know if I mentioned, Taisus Rush was a Talmud of the Merami Rothenberg. So that's a later Baal Taisus. So right off the bat, even Taisus Ri Halavon is not the whole Masechta. You have 4 Bali Taisus on the Masechta, which is a little bit interesting. Rishonim-wise, the main Rishon that really sticks out is Peirush Rabbeinu Yakim. Now, the one that's been around, it was originally published by Makitzin Damim, but the one that's been around is also by Vagshal. It came like this with the Ri Halavon in the back. Now, I don't know if it's in print anymore. However, there is somebody in the New Yeshurun journal that just came out. There's a little piece in there, and there's somebody, I think Rabbi Lerner in Eretz Yisrael, that I believe is putting out a new one. I don't.
Okay, so Yeshurun, we know Rabbi Eliezer Brat is one of the Archim, so we certainly could get his opinion on this one.
Right. So sure. So what's interesting about Rabbeinu Yakim, just from what I understand, I learned Yoma. I used it a lot. I really enjoyed it. It's like a Rashi kind of sefer, almost. He lived at the time of Rashi, actually, and evidently it seems like from the Rishonim that he wrote on every Masechta or most Masechtas of Shas, And apparently what happened was, I mean, I don't know if this is some conjecture on my part, but I think I recall this, that when they, back in the day, everything was handwritten in manuscript. So what you did was you wrote it down and you copied it over. So when you had Rashi, no one had used for some other Pirush of somebody else, because even if it was Chashiv, you use Rashi, right? Everyone used Rashi. Nowadays, we're all looking for other Rishonim, but that was what it was then. So that's mainly about Rabbeinu Yaakov. Actually, it's been, the consensus kind of is that he likely was involved in the Pirush Magensa of Mainz, which is, the listeners may know it as Rabbeinu Gershom on the side of the Gemara, which is, Rabbeinu Gershom didn't write that. That was compiled, the Pirush Magensa. So he was likely involved with that, Rabbeinu Yaakov. So that kind of style is very geschmack. If somebody's looking for another kind of Rishon, you kind of want to go along with it. And now you have Art Scroll, Mesiftus, I don't know, people. But obviously, as Chedushin, there's only other things in here. But it's something like, it's more like, what I mean is, it's more of a Pirush kind of a sefer, like a Rashi, than like a Rashba, so to speak. So
right.
that's Pirush Rabbeinu Yaakov. That's mainly the Rishonim on the Masechta. I'm sure I'm forgetting one or the other. They're small.
Not that many, actually. I think Rabbi Brut will talk a little bit more. Yoma's a Kachem Masechta, and we don't really have Rishonim on Kachem, which is a discussion. Why not? But yeah, Yoma, I have on the Yoma, in, I would say 15 years, back in my days in Eretz Yisrael, in the Brisk Yeshiva, but it's been a while. So let's get, if you're up to this point, I think when I was learning Yoma way back when, we had the Siach Yitzchak, I think I have it here for those who are watching. This was what we had. This is the Sefer. This is the go-to Sefer, at least it was then. Nachi, is this still the go-to Sefer?
I guess we have to qualify the question, because I think Mesifta is the go-to Sefer nowadays. but if someone wants to go to real Sefer, I don't mean to belittle Mesifta, but a real Sefer on the Masechta, I'll get to that, is the Siach Yitzchak on Yoma. He was in Livorno, and his name, I'm forgetting the exact years when he lived. I want to say 1700s, but someone will correct me that I was wrong on that. 1800s around. Yitzchak Nunes Vois, Vav Aleph Yud Samach. It's undoubtedly not Weiss. Now I might be pronouncing it wrong. I don't know if he was the Rav there. He was the brother-in-law of Rabbi Shmuel HaKohen of Madana. Was Charles Tshuva Zer Emes. He was friends with Malachi HaKohen, the Ad Malachi. His son was Rabbi Yaakov, was the Rav of Livorno after him. So he's famous for this. Siach Yitzchak on Yoma and on Chagiga, both Masechtas that he wrote on. He is the work. He is the Rishon Achron endpoint. He's the everything. And he goes through literally, he came out every single, Taisvis, Rashi, Gemara. He's going through back and forth. I mean, it's dense, it's lengthy, it's got everything in here.
Okay, so before you talk about a little bit, what his style is, I pulled up nice hardcover Siach Yitzchak. That one's not available, I believe. You have something there that you're holding, which is available?
Yeah, so I was going to mention that, but we can mention that now already. Yeah, so the Siach Yitzchak, unfortunately, is not available. I've heard that it's being redone, and I'm sure someone will send an email or something. I'm not confirmed, I don't know. But right now, this is a paperback. If anybody maybe people know what this is HebrewBooks.org. You can publish out of print Seforim in association with them. PublisherSafer.com it's called. And now a lot of them are available on Amazon. So what it does when it's available on Amazon is you can order it with Prime. I'm sure most people have Prime or have access to Prime. So this is $7.99 with Prime. It's great. It's under $10. You get yourself a Siach Yitzchak.
It's Monday morning, the day before Yoma starts. Get on Amazon and get your Siach Yitzchak. Be there the next day.
Right. Anyone listening on my podcast, I will include the link in the notes. If nothing else from this episode, I want to be mefarzen that you could order it, and it is available to get. Somebody's working on a new one, so I've heard, but this is available now. I mean, his style. I mean, I haven't used it really in a while, but it's really that Sephardi style, going through Pshat, Gemara, going through everything, And the other thing that I wanted to point out about it is that in the back of the Sefer, in the second part, he has Pirush Tois Yisarim de Besechta Yoma Lefi Daiti Haktsara V'Tikun Hagirsa. So he essentially went through the Tois Yishanim, correcting many mistakes and explaining it. So I've heard that this is in the Eis V'Hadar, but that last piece, or I'm sure they used it extensively. So that's something else that's related to Tois Yishanim. So this is the Sefer on the Masechta, still is. But obviously, like I said, it's a little more heavy. He's going through each, right? He's going through not each, but whatever, each, so to speak, Rashi, Tosfos. It's more of a back and forth. Now, the other thing that he quotes many times is something called, he calls it Shita Ksav Yad. And he quotes it about 400 times. So many, many, many times.
Wow.
Now, who was this? So this, it seems like he found out only at the end, because he called it at the beginning Shita Ksav Yad, and the Sharbladi knows. It's a Ram ibn Musa. He's Moroccan. He lived in 1660 to 1733, I believe. Those are the years. And he is known, he's famous for those that know, I guess, famous. He has a sefer on Masechta Sotah called Mincha Sotah, a very classical, very important sefer. It was published by Avat Shalom, back in my Shalel's farmhouse. This was just published in Ayin Tes. This was published by Machon Magen Avot. Actually, the publisher, Rabbi Mordechai Lebhar, I did an interview with.
Yes, from Los Angeles, right?
From Los Angeles, correct. He has a lot of Seforim, Halacha, he publishes. So this was published there. Now, again, what he does, interestingly, is, again, it's similar to Siach Yitzchak, the same style. He goes through a lot of, Pshatim and Siach Yitzchak quotes a lot. He also is very busy with Girsayis. The editor of this one explained that he used a printing that was the edition of the Shas that he used had a lot of mistakes. So it's correcting that Masechta. So how is it negaya? That kind of thing is interesting. The thing that I want to point out that I came across of this is that Avat Shalom, like I said, Rabbi Yaakov Shalel's publishing house has they have a sister company called Kehilot Yisrael Institute, and they published a very interesting. It's a annotated almost bibliography of there was a list of the Imre Emes of Ger. The Ger Rebbe had he was a big bibliophile. They had a lot of Seforim, and there was
Emes, one of the previous Ger Rebbes.
Yes, for those that don't know, I should have emphasized that. Yes, and he had a big library, and they have the list of his farm there. They were going to sell it. I don't know, during World War II, it got lost. Exactly what happened. There's a very extensive introduction here, and which I read when this came out. And he does, so one of the Seforim over here, number 90, is Chidushay Masechta Yoma Ravram ibn Musa. And evidently, the one that was published last year is from the Bodleian Library in Oxford, from the Hyman Michael collection. Some people know him as Chaim Michel, Mar Chaim, but his name was Hyman Michael. This one here is a different manuscript. What's interesting about that is, it's actually now in the Pnei Menachem's family, another Ger Rebbe, and there, it's what they say here is that the two different manuscripts are missing different things, and they're planning on taking the two and publishing an edition. Now, this came out a few years ago. That still has not come out, but I just want to point that out. So, again, this Shita Ksav Yad is something that's interesting if you're looking for the same sign of Pshat, Kishmaka say for an earlier Achar and something. Obviously, the Siach Yitzchak quotes all the time. So if you use Siach Yitzchak, it would make sense to get a copy as well. So that would be for those things. Now, a couple of other, before we get to like Heintiges Farm, a couple of other old Farm. Obviously, just to stay with the Sfardim for a second, I can't forget that there's a Chidushay Rabbeinu Moshe Mimran, also Avat Shalom. They have a number of Sfardim of his, also very geschmack, going through Marshi Tosfos, Pshat. Obviously.
I believe you mentioned him in your Psachim podcast also, right?
Correct, I did. And in the Psachim one, I mentioned him as well. He it's very geschmack. Now the thing is, what I mentioned there, I'll mention again. I completely forgot to say this also. The Shita Ksav Yad Masechta Yoma is readily available. Siach Yitzchak, as I said, is available on Amazon. The Mishnah Mimran is probably not available. It may be available, but it's probably not. So that's something that I want to just point out. Now, it would be, these are all, the $20 range, a little bit less, not expensive. So that's another one. Now, the other one that we can't forget is obviously the Gurzari, who was the Shagasari.
Bal Shagasari, yes.
Yeah, so we can't forget that one. Now, the Gurzari, so here's the thing. There's a nice edition, a very nice edition by Rabbi Weinstein from Lakewood. So I believe you were in touch with him, Rabbi Shweid. And that one is, I don't know, I didn't think it was around, but he said it is around and it will be back in stock, correct?
He sent me an email that'll be in the stores next week. We could leave his email address. I don't have it on me this second, but you could leave it in the notes of your episode, and I'll try to include it here somewhere as well. He says you can be in touch with him to get it as well.
Okay, right. So So that's very nice with notes, etc. There also so then there's one that just comes grocery in all three Masechtas. I think Yoma Tanis Hamakis.
Right.
But
That
one also comes in a 2-volume, but that's just plain print. There's nothing to it. There was a nice one with some notes, but that's not around anymore. It was a different one, like a purplish cover. So that one's not around. So that's really that. And the last thing I would mention is the Maram Ibn Chaviv has Yom Kippurim on Yom Kippurim. He has the Kabbas Tamarim, as that people know him, but he also has on Rosh Hashanah a little bit, and he has on Yoma on the final parak. So
okay,
that's another one that I would point out as well.
I guess we call those early till almost Heintigas Fasemes. I don't know. You want to mention that? There's also a sefer, I think, has some nice writings on Yoma, right?
Yeah, I mean, the farm that have standard on shots all have a little bits and pieces here and there. I'm not gonna list, the classical,
Right.
the Peirushim, yeah.
Yeah.
So those also, right. So now.
Okay, so you want to get to what we call the Heintigas Seforim, some of the Heintig, the Raid Seforim.
Yeah, sure. So I mean, it depends what everyone's looking for. Obviously, everyone today, once it gets to raid, I don't know today what values are because everyone has Mesifta, evidently, and that everyone has everything. But I went through the Masechta. Actually, it's bound here. I have a copy of Ezel Mekayman, who has a large amount of Sfarim. And what's nice about him is that he doesn't. First of all, if you want to do a little bit, you don't want to just cheat and have it just handed to you. A little geschmack because first of all, he goes through Gemara and he has all his Aros in the Gemara, and then he has Rashi, Taifis. It's
Very nicely done, separated.
It's similar to what the Sifsei Chachamim on Shas, the one on Brachis, Megillah Rosh Hashanah does with the old Sefer. Same thing. It's split up, which is very nice, number one. Number two, he does a lot of times ayin. So he'll be like, he brings a Rashi, ayin Siach Yitzchaks. Or sometimes he'll ask you the question, or he'll bring that a Chakira, but he's just giving you the basics. And he'll say, look here and look here. He's not going to tell you, oh, by the way, this is this and this is what I'm telling you. She doesn't do that, which is very nice. That's another, classical raid Sefer. Now, there's many others, and I'll just run through, just not to bore people with a list. But there is, I'm trying to see, I'm just going to no particular order. There's something called Shmuas Chaim, Rabbi Yuzak, has 2 volumes.
Beautiful Sefer, I must say.
Snack.
Very helpful, very well written. Yes, excellent.
Right. Yeah, so that's one. Also, the previously mentioned Rabbi Weissman has a sefer called Teiras Yoma, big, fat, thick Sefer. Only in the first 3 prakim, with a lot of raid. I think brisker raid is very that. Then there are obviously there is Shiuri Michael Feinstein, 2 volumes until Daf, I think Lamed Dalet. So that's if you want Shiuri.
And perhaps we'll get to this, but we can't forget his Shver. Chidusha Grizz has a little bit, I think, as well.
Yeah, Chidusha Grizz, and Stencil used to call it, but Chidusha Grizz. But the problem I would point out is that's only sold in a set. So if you have a set of Chidusha Grizz, great. If not, get it at the local shul. All these other ones are sold. The Reb Michals are around. They're sold in 2 individual. Each volume is sold separately. Shmos Chaim, Ezel Mekayman. These are not expensive from either, by the way. Minchas Avram has 3 volumes. Shiurim on the Masechta. That is Avram the Garbuz. There's 3 volumes. So those are also, I think, they're sold separately.
I have to be honest. When I learned Yoma, there wasn't Minchas Avram yet on Yoma. They had on Zvachim and Nachas, but fantastic Seforim. I think, if I'm not mistaken, he's a Talmud of Rebero Soloveitchik, and he says over from him, and he's working with that. I guess the brisker derech mahalach, somewhat, today's classic.
So, right, as that could be. I'm not sure of that. And then there's also Minchas Mordechai. I would point out on the I think it's the 4th parak, Torah Bekalfi. Rabbi Michal Elias, I believe his name is very interesting. I didn't see it around though, so I'm not sure if it's available. But just an interesting sefer. A couple of forums to run through that are just maybe of interest. Safras Paneach from the Rugged Shaver that they printed. Hamar is printing a couple of stuff. I don't know what's going on there. His notes and their footnotes and Beurim, just pointing out it's around. There's a Pirush Chai with pictures. There's also a Dibros Moshe from Moshe Feinstein, very small, thin volume. It was done by the family, but before they started beefing them up with like Likutim and all those other things. I don't know if it was like an in-between they did Yoma. I mentioned this Rabbi Zerkowski, who did the Tezer Rush. He has a lot of Haskamas. He has his own sefer, Masech Yuma, called Beis Shmuel. It was published it's Almana, actually, at that point. This was a while ago. And published by his family. So after they took his writings, very thick. Seems like it has a lot of raid. There's Haros Yashiv. There is Gvuras Yitzchak on Parak Yom Kippurim from Bisach Suraskin. There's an interesting sefer called Eitzar Chedushim. I still can't exactly understand what it is. It's like taking from old Seforim, new Seforim, Likutim. It's like it's a nice sefer. I know people like it, but it's interesting.
Now, for those keeping score, I'm not sure I mentioned this to you. The sefer Yad HaLevi. Who's the Yad HaLevi? For those, many people know his father is Shalom Schachter, who has his yeshiva. But when he was in Brisk, when I was there, going back, he used to sit there. People lined up to talk to him. So he has a lot of the classic. You like to see what did Rabbi from Yeshua say on some of this raid. A lot of that is there. He has some nice things. Certainly available, I know, on Eitzar Chachma. I can't tell you if it's local in the stores here in America.
Right, I'm not sure. And then another thing I'm just pointing out, again, I'm sorry if I'm going a little longer on the listing here. There's a sefer called Mibeis LaPareches. It's actually a sefer Zakaron, thick sefer, all on Masechta Yoma. So it's very interesting. And finally, more than finally, there was a 3-volume Kovetz from Avodah Brura. They also make Kovetzim. I don't think it's around, just pointing it out. And finally, I would mention, I don't think I mentioned it, there's a sefer Yom Kippurim on Parak Yom Kippurim, but 900 pages. Literally, the thing is like a tractor trailer. It's a large size, not your regular size. It's this size, but it's like literally it's Utrangas. But it's on just that Parak raid and everything. It looks good. I haven't used it, so I want to point that out as well. So,
excellent. Yes.
There are other Seforim. I know the Brechas Avram has some. There are more Seforim, but not to bore people. If I would just recap here, I would say,
wrap it up.
I went through Yoma, most of the Masechta with the Peirushim Yakim, Masiyach Yitzchak, and Ezra Mekayman. It's like that people have a Masechta. What do they need anything for? True, but the Masiyach Yitzchak will include the link. I think it's very sadistic and.
No, Ezra Mekayman, like you mentioned before, it's so to the point, short. You're looking for something to open up a certain sugya, something that interests you. Ezra Mekayman is fantastic, always fantastic.
Right,
okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, you're wrapping it up. You wanted to add anything else?
Yeah, I would just add to the old daf. Audience,
viewers.
Audience, yeah, I'm not used to using on visual.
Viewers, Talmidei Chachamim, Loimdei Daf Yomi learners around the globe. Yes.
All of those, all of the above. I would say that first of all, if anyone's interested in reaching out to me, contacting me, correcting me, or anything else, I can reach at seforimchatter@gmail.com. So SEFORIM chatter CHATTER @gmail.com. You can check out my podcast and the Twitter feed. And to the Seforim Chatter listeners, same thing. They know they can always reach me via email there if anyone has any auras. And I will include in the link the link to the Siach Yitzchak. The other Seforim, if people are interested and they can't find them, send me an email. Like I said, some of them are not available, like the Peirushim and Yakim. Not sure about the Taizer Rush. The Masad of Cook one should be, although the local Seforim store I went to that's usually good had like nothing. So I don't know.
Certainly available on Eitzar Chachma if you have the Mosader of Cook package.
Yeah, right. True. So yeah, that's about it. I would say, I guess we have to do like, thank you for the opportunity and thank you for joining me. It's like both ways.
Thank you. Whichever way you're looking at this, whether you're coming to Old Daf or Seforim Chatter, thank you. And it was a pleasure talking to you. And I hope everybody has a successful Maseches Yoma. And just to mention, I think it's important. We're starting Yoma, Rosh Sukkah, Rosh Hashanah, all these Masechtas. It's a great opportunity to jump in, whether you are a Loimed Daf Yomi on a regular basis, but you have these familiar Masechtas, so to speak, quote unquote, the easier ones. And it's a great opportunity as the summer comes along. I think Sukkah is finishing right before Rosh Hashanah. So again, it's like your Meir Shapiro has it all planned. For those learners, you need to just jump in. It's a great time, great opportunity. And I think that's it. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.